everybody, you're a boy, make a big noise, playing in the street, gonna be a big man someday. You got mud on your face, you big disgrace, kicking your can all over the place, singing we will rock you. Seriously, who doesn't love Queen? What is up, everybody? Random Man here, bringing you my review for Bohemian Rhapsody. Now, the plot of this biopic basically follows Freddie Mercury, played by Rami Malek, the iconic lead singer of the also iconic rock band Queen, as it follows his life leading up to the band's Live Aid performance at Wembley Stadium in 1985. Going into this movie, I was super duper pumped to see it. I would even go as far as to say that this became one of my most anticipated movies of 2018 after seeing the first teaser trailer for it, and the subsequent advertisements I saw for this film got me even more excited. Just seeing this story of Queen, specifically the lead singer Freddie Mercury, being put on the silver screen was overdue in some sense, as I'm surprised that a movie about the rock band Queen has not been made up until this point. Now, I personally love Queen. I am a big fan of their music. So many memorable songs they have made over the years, and with the lead in the role of Freddie Mercury, Rami Malek, he looked great in the role, so did some of the rest of the cast. I was also a fan of the screenwriter and the director for this film. Now, with this movie, there has been a lot of buzz with it, both positively and negatively. The negative side falls into the director of the film. This movie is directed by Bryan Singer, who is notable for having directed some of the X-Men films, which include the first two movies, my personal favorite being Days of Future Past, and I even enjoyed X-Men Apocalypse. Yeah, unpopular opinion, but I personally dug it. And he has come under fire recently for him having some accusations against him, and this was pre-Harvey Weinstein last year, mind you, yet he was still hired to direct this film. Yet he got subsequently fired after finishing about 80 to 85% of it for his erratic and unreliable behavior, which led the directing duties to be handed over to Dexter Fletcher, who ironically was the original choice to direct this biopic, and he has also directed the upcoming Elton John biopic Rocket Man. But setting aside some of the movie's behind-the-scenes drama, I was still looking forward to seeing it, and going into the performances, let's talk about Rami Malek in the lead role of Freddie Mercury. Now, this is a guy I've been following film career-wise for quite a while. I know he's in the show Mr. Robot, which I've personally never seen, but I heard he's great in. I first saw Malek in the Night at the Museum movies as the Pharaoh Akhben Ra. I also remember him in a nice supporting role in Short Term 12, fantastic movie. And here as Freddie Mercury, he gives an absolutely amazing performance. Malek really captured the mind, body, and soul of Freddie Mercury, down to his mannerisms, the choreography, and his very freestyle dancing, his eccentric nature off stage. This even goes down to him wearing some false teeth to emulate the buck-tooth look that Mercury had in real life. Mercury was nicknamed Bucky. I also thought Malek did an impressive job capturing the emotional internal turmoil that Mercury was facing, both as a person in his own identity, his own sexuality, and also his interactions with the other bandmates of Queen. Really, this is one of the best male lead performances I've seen all year thus far. The rest of the supporting performances, I think, are mostly well acted. There's William Lee as Brian May, the lead guitarist of Queen. He looks a lot like the real-life May, so that's perfect casting right there. Appearance-wise, he gave a solid performance. Ben Hardy as Roger Taylor, the drummer of Queen, he was good. Joseph Mazzello as John Deacon, the bassist of Queen. Fun fact, this actor was the guy who played the little boy Tim in the original Jurassic Park film. Now here he is all grown up, and I thought he did a strong job. Aidan Gillen plays John Reed, the manager of Queen. I liked him in the film. Tom Hollander as Jim Beach, or Miami Beach as Freddie likes to call him. He is the lawyer turned manager for Queen. He also did a fine job. There's also Alan Leach as Paul Prenter, the personal manager to Freddie Mercury. They have quite a bit of notable moments together where there's some intimacy involved and their chemistry is existent, and then it also makes for some of the more dramatic moments of the film. Mike Myers even shows up as an EMI executive named Ray Foster, who is a fictional character, but he is almost unrecognizable under his hair and makeup and beard, but I knew it was Mike Myers. He was thrown in there basically as a reference to Wayne's World, as Myers in Wayne's World, the movie. He was partially responsible for revitalizing the popularity of this movie's title track, Bohemian Rhapsody. And yeah, I thought he was fine for what he was given. But I think the performance that is getting largely overlooked in favor of Rami Malek in the flashy role of Freddie Mercury is Lucy Boynton as Mary Austin, the longtime partner to Freddie Mercury. I thought the scenes she had between herself and Malek were dynamite. I really bought their relationship that they had together. Boynton, I'm personally a fan of. Aside from this movie, I really loved her in the movie Sing Street, and her performance on her own I thought was terrific. So overall, with the performances here, I thought they were mostly solid, but of course the biggest shout out has to go to Rami Malek as Freddie Mercury here. Getting into some of this film's writing, the movie's screenplay was written by Anthony McCarten, who has previously produced and written films such as The Theory of Everything and Darkest Hour. Coincidentally, these two films are also biopics about famous Brits and ended up taking home some Best Actor Oscars for Eddie Redmayne's performance as Stephen Hawking and Gary Oldman's performance as Winston Churchill, respectively. And on that note, I do think Malek should be nominated for the Best Actor Oscar at this point in time, as, like I said, I thought he gave a phenomenal performance, and also some of the writing really aided in having him be a relatable and grounded character as we are introduced to him. The movie does begin with Mercury waking up on the day of the Live Aid performance in 1985, then flashes back all the way to the 1970s. In case you didn't know, yeah, Freddie Mercury is not Freddie Mercury's real name. That is made very clear with his home life being shown, and also the way Mercury meets some of the members of Queen. Now, the way this film was marketed suggested that Mercury would be the core focus of the film, in this being a biopic about him, and then him becoming the lead singer of Queen and the band's career. However, this goes into one of the issues I have with this movie, specifically with McCarten's script, in that the movie doesn't entirely know what it wants to be. It doesn't know if it wants to be a straight biopic about Freddie Mercury and going into some of the deeper things associated with them, or being a Queen biopic with Freddie Mercury just standing out more so than the rest of the band members. This in turn also connects with some of the directing of this movie, in it also being unfocused in some scenes when they are looked at separately and not connected to each other, as some moments of the movie do include the members of Queen showing how the origins of some of their most famous songs came about, and then also Mercury with his own personal life. When one looks at these scenes in isolation, they do fit for how they could be integrated in a movie with a particular focus that they would show, but since they are integrated together in some very notable moments almost all the time, it didn't gel as well as I expected it to be. Again, going into how this movie didn't entirely know what it wanted to be. One would also think that since Freddie Mercury is being emphasized in the marketing campaign for this film, that a lot more of his personal side would be dug into. On the contrary, it's more of a baseline face value kind of thing when we get to see him struggling with his sexuality or getting into some qualms with the other members of Queen. It wasn't as dense or dark as I expected a movie like this to be, as if you know Mercury's real life story, I don't want to spoil it in case you don't know what happened to him, it's at its core, very sad and also quite tragic what happened to this guy. And yeah, like I've said, details such as Mercury's own sexuality is spotlighted in some moments, but this also has to do with this movie being notably historically inaccurate. Now, I have said that I am a big fan of Queen, and I do know quite a bit of some of the timeline of their history in creating music. So when you see some sequences of how some of their famous songs are created, or just what happened with Mercury's own personal life, it glaringly does not line up with what actually happened in reality. Now, I can accept historical inaccuracies or anything being omitted or added for the sake of telling a movie and adapting it to the big screen, but in this sense, it messed with the structure of the movie. Again, without giving anything away, some details were noticeably fabricated for the sake of dramatization and to get the movie to run at a specific rate, which goes into the movie's pacing. The movie was inconsistent there as well, as sometimes I felt it rush or drag at its 2 hour and 15-minute running time just about. I mean, I was most engaged with the film when it came to the musical sequences, whether Queen was creating some of their famous music or they're actually performing it on stage, which goes into this movie's soundtrack. It's an understatement to say that this movie has great music. Of course it has great music. It's mostly Queen music. Who doesn't love Queen? As I've said before in this video, I love Queen. It really did have me so hyped at certain points in the film. When it got to the Live Aid performance at the end of the film, I got a personal kick out of my personal favorite song of Queen's, Radio Gaga, being performed. In talking about other pros this movie has, the production design of this film I thought was stellar, going into the way the movie looks in the 1970s and 1980s. It looked pretty accurate for the time period. Also the costumes, I've already mentioned the false teeth that Rami Malek wears in playing Freddie Mercury. This also extends to the long hair that Mercury has early on in the film to later having it all being chopped off and him growing the famous mustache that we knew he had. Some CGI with the Live Aid sequence at the end was also noticeably used, and yeah, it looked like some portions of the crowd there were copied and pasted all over the screen, and while it did become a little distracting, it did not take away for how marvelously done that final portion of the movie was. This sequence is the movie's biggest selling point in the lead up to that happening, with it taking place for about 15 to 20 minutes and a few of Queen's songs being performed. And yeah, I would be lying if I said I wasn't engaged with that part of the movie, as I was. It goes back into Malek's performance, his flamboyant portrayal of Freddie Mercury, so fitting to the actual guy. Also the great lip syncing of Mercury's actual vocals to Malek's mouth throughout the movie, not just in the Live Aid sequence. Yeah, aesthetically, a lot of this movie was surely pleasing, like I've mentioned. Really, it just came down to some of the directing and script that didn't have this movie live up to its fullest potential in being the Freddie Mercury / Queen biopic that we deserve to have. It's a disappointing shame that the movie came together the way it did in its final form, as when it's strong, it's super strong. When it's weak, it's wearily weak though. It also has the untimely distinction of being released about a month after the 2018 remake of A Star is Born. No, this isn't the recent version that just came out. This is the 1954 version starring Judy Garland and James Mason. I'm just holding it up for visual aid purposes. But yeah, the recent remake of this movie, I think, is a vastly superior film to Bohemian Rhapsody. And that's saying something for A Star is Born being a fictional story also set in the music industry, being a lot more juicy and full of depth compared to the film adaptation of Queen and Freddie Mercury's story in its dramatized form. With all of that being said, if you're looking for the ideal biopic about Queen and Freddie Mercury, you're not going to get it here. If you want an excuse to see this version of the story be told on the big screen and listen to Queen's greatest hits being heard loud, you'll get that here. I would even almost go as far as to say that this movie is worth watching on some level for Rami Malek's legendary performance as Freddie Mercury and for the final sequence of the film taking place at that Live Aid concert. But aside from that, looking at this movie in general, I think it is okay at best, a decent watch for fans and non-fans of Queen alike. I cautiously recommend it. My final verdict for Bohemian Rhapsody is 3 out of 5 stars. Thank you all, as always, for watching. Be sure to like this video, comment on what you thought of Bohemian Rhapsody, social media links in the description, subscribe to my channel for more, and I'll catch you on the next movie review.